All right, so now we're going to go into under-over body lock passing, where I have one arm under my partner's arm and one arm over my partner's arm like so. Now this is actually a much tighter body lock if you can get to it, because there's more mass inside the lock of your arms. The problem is it's harder to actually get to because of the fact that as you're trying to lock your hands, your partner's trying to shoot an underhook up and go into her own counterattacks. Okay. Now, what are some of the differences and similarities between passing with two arms under versus one arm over? The main utility of using an arm trapped with an under-over body lock is that it will become much easier to step over your partner's knee into half guard, because now she can't reach for my knee with her right hand. So if I use any kind of sprawling method, for example, where I get a leg to the inside and I try to step over my partner's knee, she can do to some degree. She can stop and reach for my knee, but it's a pretty easy thing if you're consistent to just step a leg over the knee eventually and force a half guard. All right, when I don't have the hand trapped, now she can start reaching for my knee. It's hard for her. She can move her hand around. It's a much harder thing for her to do when I have that arm trapped, where now I go to step over. She can block it maybe once or twice, but it's a pretty easy thing. Go ahead, try to block it. It's a pretty easy thing to just move my partner's arm where I want it to, so I can get over the knee and I can force her into half guard. Okay? Another great utility of having my arm over my partner's arm is that the second I step over my partner's leg into a half guard or I pass her guard, because I'm over the arm, now a cranial shift is incredibly easy. She has no ability to take inside bicep ties or inside position with the arm. Whereas if her arm was over my arm, if I went to go move into a crossface, for example, she can stop me because she has the top hand position. But when I have the top hand position and I force half guard, now I can just move easily to an underhook. When she goes to stop me from getting a crossface, I have the top hand position, and now I can easily move to control my partner's head and shoulders and going into passes from half guard. So the main utilities of this are that it will be incredibly easy to step over your partner's knee to either go into a pass or go into half guard, relative to passing with two arms underneath your partner's arms. And once you actually do that, it'll be much easier to get to a cranial shift where I move up to controlling my partner's head and shoulders, to actually move into a pass, into a side control where I can start to isolate limbs. The disadvantages of using under-over, the drawbacks, are that it limits your high percentage passes to one side. Okay, I generally recommend, and we're going to pass to both sides, but I generally recommend with a good player, you pass to the opposite side as the underhook. If I pass to the opposite side as the underhook, my partner has no ability to scramble up towards me because the underhook's on the wrong side. Whereas if I pass to the same side as the underhook, if I'm naive from here and I unlock my hands, my partner can start to immediately use that underhook to start hiking up. She can go into recovery, she can go up to my back, she can go into my legs, and she can start to go into offense from there. So I'm not going to say you can't pass to the same side as the underhook, but it's going to be much higher percentage against high-level players that are relative to your skill level if you pass to the opposite side as the underhook, the overhook side. Okay, so one of the potential drawbacks of using under-over body locking is that your passing will be generalized to one side rather than being able to go from side to side with symmetrical hand positions with two arms underneath. So just little comparisons here between regular standard body locking with two arms underneath and over-under body locking with an arm trapped. So now let's look at entrances into this over-under position. I'm not going to repeat all of the entrances that we looked at before. Understand that all the entrances into a traditional body lock are the same as the entrances into over-under positions. The only difference is when we're looking to enter into a standard front body lock, we're looking for elbows separated from the body, two elbows separated from the body. When we're looking to enter into over-under, we're looking for one elbow separated and one elbow connected to the body so that we can lock over the arm. Okay, so anything where I can get my partner off balance, for example, we're hand fighting from here, and I see the elbow comes close to the body. I can push the elbow to the body, for example, we're hand fighting. I can push the elbow to the body, and now from here we just come in and we just go through. We lock up like so. We can go in. We can start getting our partner off balance. I see the elbow comes relatively close to the body, and from here we go in and we lock over like so. And now we're ready to go. We're playing from the feet. I see the elbows are in close by the hips. I go to touch my partner's head. She goes to clear the grip, for example. And now from here, one elbow separated, one elbow is connected. We can strip a grip, we can pummel the hand, and then from here we can come right in and we can go in and lock over our partner's arm like so. So any off balance that gets one elbow separated and one elbow connected, we can go in and lock. We can also use a baiting method where we allow our partner to get an underhook and then we crush the underhook down, whether from a seated or from a supine position. So we can play a game where I have an arm in and I let my partner get an underhook up high like so. And now from here, I play a game where I take my chin over my partner's elbow. The further my chin drifts away from the elbow, the more advantage she has with the underhook. So I just play a game where she goes to put the underhook up, and I just take my chin over my partner's elbow like so. And now from here, when she goes to use that underhook, it's a very difficult thing. And now we go in, we lock up, and now our whole thing is to put weight over the underhook arm, her underhook arm. So when she goes to hike that underhook up, I just tilt my partner down to the side. So we play a different game where instead of pulling my partner in towards us, we play a tilting game. Where now she goes to use that underhook, and we just tilt our partner down to the floor. And now we just walk a circle, flatten our partner out so that her shoulders are behind the hips. And now we can pull our partner in and fully flatten her out. So we play a game where I'm playing in here. I allow her to have an underhook. And from here, the second I see this, I immediately just sag everything back and away. So I sit on my heels. I pull my elbow back. I turn my thumb to the ceiling, and I take my chin over my partner's elbow. Here. She goes to use the underhook. And the second we do that, we just drop and lock. Once the hands are connected in any fashion, any kind of grip you want, from here, when she goes to use that underhook, we just tilt my partner down to the floor. And now we just walk a circle that squares her up. And now we pull and drive forward and sit my partner down to the floor. So she goes to punch an underhook in. And now we're ready to work. We can do this additionally where I flatten my partner out with a traditional body lock. I flatten my partner out, and now from here, I bait my partner into punching an underhook in with her left hand. So she goes to punch in, and now she goes to lock her hands or whatever the case is. And the second I see my partner take that hand in, I just lean back and I just shoot my right hand deeper underneath my partner's back. And then I lock my hands again. And now from here, when she goes to use that underhook, I just, again, put weight over the elbow. If she locks her hands from here, or usually she comes in front of my face, if she locks her hands from here, this is why it's important to put the weight over the elbow. Even if my hands are locked, and she's much stronger than me, she can still separate them. But if I put my chin over the elbow, when she goes to use that underhook effectively, there's no way she can ever separate it, and then I can start passing from here. So I can bait my partner from a supine position. Maybe I'm going for an inside elbow. Maybe I have a tight waist. Maybe I'm going to unlock my hands, and I see the underhook come in. When I see this, I just lean my weight back towards my heels, and this exposes my partner's upper back. And now from here, when she goes to use that underhook, we just shoot and lock. And now we put weight over the elbow. And now from here, when she goes to start using that underhook, completely useless, and we can start going in, looking to step over into half guard, and going into whatever passes we want from here. So we have traditional ways of locking, like we looked at before. We also have baiting methods where we can bait our partner from a seated or from a supine position to go to put the arm in as an underhook. And then as she goes to put it in, I relax, and then tense, and I lock everything up. And we're ready to start going into our passing game from there. All right, so now let's look at a rule that we have when we're looking at under-over or over-under body lock passing. Now, this is a rule, and like all rules, you can break them. Okay, there are certain exceptions to this rule, and you can at some point and sometimes unlock your hands when you're over-under body lock passing. But in general, once I lock my hands over in an over-under position, I do not unlock them until I pass my partner's guard or I step over a knee in some fashion. Force them into half guard or shelf the leg and go to step over a knee and then go to make a cranial shift. If my partner has two butterfly hooks in with two knees around my rib cage, I don't unlock my hands, because then my partner can utilize that underhook and she can start to go into underhooks and shoulder crunches and things of that nature. The main danger when I have an arm underneath is that if my partner has 2 butterfly hooks in, at any point my hands come unlocked, my partner will always realize there's not as much tension. She'll take her left hand across, and from here she'll start putting a wedge in underneath my chin, and she'll go across my shoulder line, and she'll start to elevate my arm up and over. And now you just went from having an over-under body lock, which is one of your best passing positions, to now she has a shoulder crunch on you, which is one of her best sweeping positions. So I play a general rule where when I lock my hands, I don't unlock them until I step over my partner's knee. So whether it be to butterfly half, to half guard, whatever the case is, I do something where I step over my partner's knee, and now when she goes to use that underhook, if she pulls it up, she just pulled it right into a crossface, and now I can make an easy transition into my prime passing positions from here. But I don't unlock it, my partner still has 2 butterfly hooks in place. Okay, this is super, super important because a lot of people will lock thinking, okay, now I have a body lock, and they'll try to make transitions to inside elbow positions, to tight waist, and things like that, and they'll try to start splitting their partner's legs, but you can't play that game from here. I can't play a game where I'm here, and then I start going in, and now I start splitting and forcing shells and things like that. It's not going to happen. The second I go to unlock my hands to do that, now I'm being compromised, and my partner's going to try to sweep me from here. Okay? So this means that, in general, you're not going to use any inside elbow positions. You're not going to switch your hands to a long arm, short arm. You're going to have hands locked on the center line with a standard body lock, whether it be 10 finger, palm to palm, or wrist to wrist. And our hands will stay here until we can step over a knee. Now it's permissible to unlock my hands, move to a top-headed arm, and start my passing, or stay with the body lock and start my passing from there. Okay? So there are exceptions to this rule. This is a general rule, and you have to be cognizant of this when you start going into passing with one arm trapped. So I'm not going to reteach all the same exact leg pommeling that I did from the standard body locking. We're just going to look at general movement patterns on what we are going to be doing from this over-under position. And in general, it's going to be a pretty easy thing. You're going to know right away. You're going to lock your partner's hands in place, and she's either going to try to pull the hand out, which will make a conversion to a standard body lock, where now you can switch your hand positions and go into all of the other things that we looked at previously, or the hand will stay trapped inside, and then you're going to play a pretty generic, basic game where you look to step into half guard or pass your partner's guard right away, depending on how skilled your partner is. So you can shelf the leg, you can stuff the leg. It's going to be pretty hard to split or double split the leg, but you can split the leg. And you look to step over into half guard, step over the knee, and then go into your half guard passing with body locks or upper body control. We're going to talk about passing to the underhook side next, which is completely different. But if you're passing to the overhook side, it's pretty much the same thing as we've done this whole time, except for the fact that the hand position is not moving. I'm not moving to a tight waist or inside elbow position or any of that. And my partner is going to have a very hard time stopping me from eventually stepping over a knee because of the fact that the arm is trapped. Okay, so we're just playing a very similar game to what we did way in the beginning of this instructional. We're playing a leg pommeling game of trying to shelf the legs, split the legs, stuff the legs, and playing from here. So I flatten my partner out. Sorry, no, this is terrible. I flatten my partner out, and now when she goes to start moving around from here, I just play a basic game where I start sprawling past. She goes to stop me from stepping over the knee, and I start playing a game where from here I can start knee driving through, or from here I can start stepping over. I can start passing. Many different ways that we can go from here. Okay, that's going to be a general game that leads me towards the side of the overhook, and I'm looking to go in and play same kind of game we played before. Okay, so I'm not going to reteach all the same moves just with the arm trap, but it's a pretty similar game, assuming you're passing to the overhook side, as all the things that we looked at previously. All right, so now we're going to look at passing to the underhook side. And passing to the underhook side, I generally recommend passing to the overhook side. Passing to the underhook side is possible, but what I generally recommend is starting with the pass to the underhook side and then finishing on the opposite side. The problem with only passing to one side is when you specialize your passing into one specific area, it's much easier for her to defend in that one specific area. But when you have generalized passing from side to side, it's much harder for her to read where you're going and much easier for you to pass. So you can't just hammer away at one side. So if you're going to pass, start passing to the underhook side. For example, where I step over a knee, and from here, I look to start going in. I threaten to pass to one side, and now from here, my partner goes to start locking me in half guard, but I redirect, and now I drive my knee across to the other side. And now I'm passing on the opposite side, where now from here we can go in, we can start clearing the leg, and now we're back on the correct side where we can pass and we can unlock our hands and safely move to a cross face and an underhook. Or we come in, we start playing a game, and I split the legs, for example, and from here I look to start coming up. I step over into half guard, but I don't want to unlock my hands because now my partner has an underhook. So instead, from here, I play a game where I come in, I drive a knee up, and now I start going in, driving the knee across and passing to the other side. Where I start passing in one direction, and I navigate across to the other side. Okay, there's various ways that we can do this. So I generally recommend, if you're going to pass to the underhook side, and the problem remains the same, it's just you're not actually finishing on the one side. I generally recommend, if you're going to start with a pass to the underhook side, you start passing in that direction, and then you redirect and finish across on the other hook side and the overhook side, or finish and mount. It's much easier that way than passing into side control, finishing here, and now you're like, okay, well, what the hell do I do? The second I unlock my hands, my partner has an underhook, and she's going to start regarding or coming up and beating me from there. So I play a game where I flatten my partner out, and I'm trying to pass to the overhook side, but she knows I'm trying to pass to that side. So instead, I change directions and I start passing to the other side. Now I step over, I start passing here. And then I redirect, and I go across the other side. And then I pass, and I'm in the correct side to unlock my hands and make the cranial shift. So I start passing on the underhook side, and then I redirect, and I either finish and mount, where now my partner can't use the underhook to start going into reguards or counter offense, or I redirect to the other side and pass the side control on the correct side, make the cranial shift, and then I don't have any issues. All right. Now we're going to look at, if we want to pass the underhook side and we can't redirect, how do we actually solidify a pass without our partner using an underhook to come up and giving us issues? All right, so now let's look at, assuming we actually want to pass the underhook side, for whatever reason it may be, how we can actually solidify a pass and make some kind of cranial shift, some kind of upper body control without our partner using the underhook to disrupt us. There are a couple different ways that I like to work from here. My favorite one is by finishing with a shin mount. Okay, what is a shin mount? A shin mount is where my partner's laying down, and I have my shin. I'm technically mounted on my partner, and instead of having a full mount of my legs on the other side, I have my shin across my partner's hips like so. We call this a shin mount. Okay, it's kind of like a hybrid between a mount and a knee on belly. Okay, so I call this a shin mount. When I pass to the underhook side, because I have the underhook on the near side and the overhook on the far side, if I unlock my hands, my partner can use the underhook pretty effectively. But because I have the underhook on the near side, my partner has no ability to connect her knee and her elbow to form an efficient side guard on this side, meaning that bringing my knee up to the hips is a pretty easy thing. Okay. Whereas if I pass to the opposite side and I want to go into a mount, and I pass to the overhook side, and now from here my partner can form a side guard. So when I go into mount, mounting's actually a little bit harder from here. But when I pass to the underhook side, I have the arm trapped. When she goes to form a side guard, she can't do it. And this makes it incredibly easy now for me to take my shin up and across my partner's hips. Now, because my base of support is compromised, what I can't do is have my knees close together, lean my weight, and then take my left knee up. My partner bridges, you're just going to fall over. Okay? So what I have to make sure of is that I take my right knee far out and wide over my partner's shoulder line and out diagonally away from my partner. So at any point when she goes to bridge, she goes into my base of support. Okay? If you have someone uber explosive, you can even step a leg up. But this is pretty rare for your partner to be able to take you over like this. Okay? Now from here, I'm just going to take my left knee and I'm going to step it up to my partner's hips like so. And my partner goes to bridge now. It's a pretty hard thing for her to actually off balance you in a way that she can start to take you over. If I unlock my hands from this position and my partner goes to use her underhook effectively, it's a pretty easy thing from here to just take a grip over my partner's tricep. And now, when she goes to use that underhook, I can mount my partner like so. I can swish my legs across the body like so. There's a ton of different things that we can do from here. Usually the determining factor is contention upon your partner's elbow position. If I can get my knee inside my partner's elbow, I go straight to mount. Because now when she goes to knee elbow escape, she has the outside elbow position, she can't knee elbow escape. If she has the inside elbow position and I try to mount, you go right into an elbow escape, now your partner reguards. So if I see my partner steals the inside position at the elbow relative to my knee, I swish my legs across and I play this game here. So now when she goes to recover, she can't. If she goes to bridge into me, I have an inside bicep tie. Now it's a pretty easy thing to take a cross face, start punching my hands inside, and I can start isolating my partner's limbs once again. So we can switch sides to the other side. So we can pass all the way to the underhook side, and then if we have to, we can switch to mount or switch across to the other side with a shin mount. But everything starts off this pass. We go in, and we're here. Now, from this position, we just lean our weight like so. When I put my shin across my partner's hips, I'm not tense. The more tense I am, the easier it is for her to off balance me when she bridges. Okay. So I put my shin over my partner's hips like so, and now as she goes to bridge, I just slightly disconnect my shin with my partner's hips, and I just hook as a butterfly hook inside underneath my partner's hamstring like so. That if she goes to give a strong bridge, I get caught on my partner's hamstring. And now, if she stays in this position, I just swish her, my right foot in. We come in and we start stepping right over into mounted position, and now we win this game. Assuming she doesn't bridge, and she's trying to bring everything inside, then I play a simple game where from here, I unlock my hands, she goes to use the underhook, and we slide our knee in like so. We pull our underhook hand down, and as the underhook hand comes out, we replace our hand with our own knee. Assuming we can win the battle for inside knee position, we just flick the leg into mount, and we win this battle. Assuming for whatever reason my partner wins the battle for inside elbow position, we just swish her, the legs across. We dig our knee underneath our partner's shoulder on the far side. Now when she goes to start bridging towards me, I control the far shoulder, and we can easily punch an underhook in, and now we can start working to go back into mount, start pinning arms down, going into various submissions, and we have both of our partner's arms isolated very effectively from here. So we start with a shin mount, and everything builds off a shin mount. So I pass with a body lock to the underhook side, however it may be. The second I pass, leg comes out, either foot up or knee down, whatever you want. From here, I start leaning slightly to my right, and I just pop my left shin up like so. Now from here, my partner goes to give a strong bridge. We end here. If I can time it properly, I just swish my right leg in, and we mount. If my partner doesn't bridge or I don't time it properly, she goes to bridge and maybe she comes back down. I play a game where I move to here. She goes to the elbow escape. She can't. She has the outside elbow position. When she goes to bring the elbow inside with the right elbow, she can't. And I can easily slide 2 knees inside my partner's elbows, completely negating her knee elbow escape. If for any reason she brings the elbow inside, I just swish her across. Now when she goes to move or recover, it's a pretty easy thing to negate that and solidify a pass on the opposite side. But everything starts with a shin mount. Depending on what your partner does, you can pass, and there's, again, tons of different sequences off here, moving around your partner's body with dynamic pins. But everything's starting with a shin mount. You pass to the underhook side, you go into a shin mount, which is always going to be easy because your partner can't form an effective side guard, knee and elbow connection, because of the fact that you're on the underhook side. So while you're at a disadvantage, because she is the underhook on the far side, you have the near side underhook, which means there's no side guard, which means you can always move to a shin mount and play from there. And depending on your knee and elbow position, you move accordingly from side to side. All right, so another way that we can pass, assuming we don't want to move to a shin mount for whatever reason, just another option. They're both great. The shin mount is my favorite. Maybe it's not yours. Is using a V-grip inside my partner's armpit with a cross shoulder post so she can't actually use the underhook effectively. So I pass to this underhook side, and now my partner's whole thing, when I unlock my hands, is to use this underhook to effectively get her head underneath my chest. If her head doesn't come underneath my chest, she can't use the underhook effectively. All right, so the whole thing is to hike my elbow up and over her shoulder line to get the head underneath the chest, and now things start to go south from here. So the second I go to unlock my hands, I immediately, first thing, is I take my chin over my partner's elbow. This will delay her from just shooting the underhook up quickly. If my head's over hers, I unlock my hands and she's already gone. So the first thing is, I take my chin over my partner's elbow like so. Now this isn't going to stop her from using the underhook, but it'll definitely slow her down. And now from here, the second she goes to use that underhook effectively, it's a delayed reaction. And that allows me to put a V-grip inside of my partner's armpit like so. And now from here, I just take my elbow inside my partner's hip, and I clamp everything down so that my chin remains over the elbow. When she goes to effectively use that underhook, it's a very difficult thing. And now I can easily take my right hand out, and I can use a cross shoulder post, or reverse crossface, whatever you want. I previously referred to it as a reverse crossface, but it's really just a cross shoulder post. We use a cross shoulder post here, so now this keeps my partner's head far out and away from my chin. When she goes to use that underhook to move, it's almost impossible. And now it's a pretty easy thing from here to start working your way into a situation where I can pin the upper body, and then I can pommel my elbow inside to an inside bicep tie. And now we play a game where we look to pommel through to a crossface, and we lock our hands in a 10-finger grip. If your partner's stopping you, pommeling to a crossface with an inside bicep tie, then we just slide our knee right over the bicep, and we pin the arm down. Now we have that near side arm isolated. And now from here we can move to a crossface. We can put a 10-finger grip inside. When she goes to pommel that hand back to the inside position, she can't. And now from here, we can go in, we can make that switch to top head and arm, and now we effectively pass to the underhook side, converted to the far side underhook. So whenever I pass the body lock to the underhook side, and I feel like, oh, I don't want to unlock my hands from here without knowing what I'm doing. The second I see this, I just take my chin over my partner's elbow like so. Now, the second she goes to use that underhook, she'll be bringing the arm up. That will give me space to punch a V-grip in. Now, when she goes to use it, I just put everything over the elbow. My arm will always be able to come out because she'll be trying to come up, and now I can come in and I can pin the shoulders down. When she goes to move from here, it's a very, very difficult thing. She can't move her head at all. And now, I just simply pommel my elbow inside. We put an inside bicep tie in place. I play a dilemma game where if she doesn't do anything with her hand, I switch to a crossface. If she blocks me, she exposes the elbow and the bicep. Now the knee arm is isolated. She goes to stop the crossface now. She can't. And now from here we lock a 10-finger grip. She goes to pommel that hand inside. Now we have an underhook. We have our partner's arm isolated, and now we're ready to go to work and move to submissions right from there. Okay? So passing to the underhook side, this time using a V-grip with the cross shoulder post so our partner can't effectively use the underhook. And you can chain these together. You don't have to just use one or the other. I can use a shin mount with this V-grip. Like so. Where now, as she goes to get up, it's a very difficult thing for her. And I have the choice of passing the side control, or I can switch from the V-grip to the tricep. We can start moving into high mount positions. So we can chain these together. You don't have to just use a shin mount or a V-grip. We can use them both. We can start with the shin mount, use the V-grip. We can start with the V-grip, move to the shin mount. We can play them back and forth. Okay, this is a way that you pass the underhook side reliably, and not just, oh, I passed their legs. Now we're in side control. Yeah, you scored your points, but the second you open your hands, if you don't know what you're doing, your partner's just going to come in, use the underhook. Now they're on your back, they're on your legs, they regard, and then everything you just did doesn't mean anything, and your partner's in some kind of counter offense, and you lost everything. So you have to know what you're doing if you choose to pass the underhook side. And there will be times where you do have to pass the underhook side because you can't specialize your attacks all to one side. There has to be generalized pressure in both directions, passing from right to left. Now, we've looked at high tripoding recently. We're going to look at tripoding when we have the one arm trapped. When I go into body locks with one arm trapped and I go into a tripod, I go into a low tripod and not a high tripod. What is the reason for this? If I go into a high tripod, I'm not saying you can't do it, but the risk of your partner exposing the underhook becomes much greater. So I generally prefer to use a lower tripod. The main issue is if my partner goes into body lock me, one arm over, one arm under, like so, and she goes into a high tripod where she puts her head all the way up on the floor like so, it's a pretty easy thing for me from here to start either connecting my hands behind the back or taking my hand, if I can, across in front of my partner's face and be pulling the underhook up to a point where her hands, she gets off balance and her hands unlock. So what will happen is she has her hands locked tight, and from here, I just pull my knees to my chest, and I just get my partner's shoulder slightly above mine, and now the hands come to the floor, and now you're in shoulder crunch territory, and everything starts to fall apart. So I'm not saying that you can't high tripod from a position where you have an arm trapped, but it's risky, and there's no reason to do it because of the fact you're in such a dominant position. It's much easier to low tripod. Okay, so I tripod, but instead of putting my head on the floor, I put my ear on my partner's shoulder. So what this will look like is I go into a tripod, and as I tripod, I bring my legs up so they're relatively weightless, but instead of going full with my head to the floor, like so, if my partner brings her hands around and locks them maybe around, and now she pulls her knees to her chest and starts off balancing me, my hands can become separated, and actually forward shift them I'm in a shoulder crunch. So instead, when I tripod and I always tripod and I put weight over the underhook side. You never, ever, ever go into a tripod where I tripod to the opposite side, or anybody good at least. I tripod to the opposite side and I start raising the underhook. If I start tripoding and I tripod to my underhook side, now it's an easy thing for anyone relatively good to take their hand across my face, lock their hand, and now you find yourself where the tightness of the body lock is compromised. Even if she doesn't unlock your hands, when she goes to start putting pressure on here, it's hard for me to start pummeling my legs. My head's moving away, my head position's out of place, and now from here the underhook eventually ends up coming out, and you can lock your hands for a certain amount of time, but you can't really get anything going as far as passing. So I always tripod to this position, okay? I'm not saying you're never going to find yourself in a position where maybe really briefly you tripod in this direction, but you always have to cut back to this position. I don't ever stay in a tripod for long amounts of time where I'm pulling my partner's underhook up. You can maybe move to one side, like so, to start pummeling legs, then you think back and you go back in the opposite direction. But I don't consistently pass in a tripod with a tripoding method to the side of my underhook. I always pass with a low hip method. If I'm going to pass to that side, it's always clamping the underhook down and I'm sitting back towards my partner's hips, never driving forward towards the shoulders. So if I am going to pass to the underhook side, it's always in a position where my partner's underhook is crushed, like so. Never where I'm driving forwards and allowing the underhook to come up. Right, so this is super important. Now, when I do go into a tripod, I take my ear to my partner's shoulder and I go into a low tripod, like so. And this is the position we work from. So my ear is connected to my partner's shoulder, and now when she goes to use that underhook, it's a very difficult thing. And now my legs are relatively weightless compared to before. My knees are off the floor, and I'm more mobile up on my feet. Okay, so we use a low tripoding method rather than a high tripoding method, and we always tripod to the side of my overhook. If you want to fake movements out to the side of my underhook, I can. But I don't ever consistently pass against anyone high level like so. She's always going to bring a hand across my face, and now she's going to lock her hands, and this never ends up working out for anybody. Okay? So if we're going to start on my underhook side, I never tripod and stay passing to that side. I always start tripoding and passing to the side of the overhook. Now let's look at why we would do this. So let's look at why I would go into a low tripod when I'm passing with an over-under position. Number one, it just makes my legs relatively weightless compared to being on two knees and then sitting back onto my heels. So it makes pommeling and hip switching a lot easier a lot of the times. In addition, it blocks my partner's view from my knee much better than if my hips were low. So when my hips are low, it's pretty easy for her. It's hard for her to do anything with the hand because it's trapped, but it's easier for her to see what's going on. She can look around the corner and she can see where my knee is relative to her knee and me stepping over her leg. But when I start going into a tripod, like so, now when she goes to look at my knee, I can use my head to block where she's looking. She's looking up towards the ceiling. So now she has no idea where my knee is, and a lot of times it makes it much easier and faster to step over my partner's knee, forcing half guard or going into a pass right from the get-go. So it makes pommeling easier, it makes hip switching easier because I have weightless legs, or relatively weightless legs, and it makes it hard for my partner to see what's going on in the side I'm passing to. In addition to that, it gives me the ability to pummel my hands back to the inside position should I want to do that. So from here, if I'm tripoding into my partner like so, and now I have weight on her, I can unlock my hands, and I can use this to pin my partner's shoulder to the floor, making it harder for her to pommel her hands. So if I'm low hip method, I'm going to pommel my hand, she just immediately punches the underhook in, and now she starts using the underhook. But if I can pin this shoulder and make it hard for my partner to connect her own hands through this tripod, now when she goes to use that hand to pommel through, I can pommel my hands back to the inside, and now I can make transitions to tight waist with the inside elbow. I can make transitions into double underhooks and start passing it. I can move my hands and pommel my hands in a way that I wouldn't be able to if my hips were low. The second I go to unlock my hands if my hips are low from here and I'm playing a game, the second I unlock my hands, my partner just immediately hikes the underhook up, and now I'm getting beat from here. But when I tripod and I pin the shoulders effectively to the ground, even if I'm here and I unlock my hands and there's no tripod, the underhook comes up. But when I'm tripoding, now, when she goes to bring the underhook up, it's a difficult thing. I can keep the shoulder pinned, and I can stop her from hiking that underhook up, and I can make a pommel much easier to other positions should I want to change my hand position and not stay with the arm trapped. Okay? So this is why I would tripod. It makes it easier to pommel, it makes it hard for your partner to see what's going on, or with the pommel with the legs, and it makes it easier for you to pommel your hand back inside should you choose to do that. Just before we start going into over-under passing with unlocked hands, we're going to just recap this, and I'm just going to give you the general simplistic breakdown of how you normally operate against 99.9% of people on the planet when you're working to pass with over-under body locks. It's a pretty easy game to play. And it's based around you trapping your partner's arm and stepping over a knee, whether it be hip switching right to side control, which is going to happen like most of the time because people, like the average person is just so like shook when you get a tight body lock around them with an arm trap that's so tight, they feel like their spine's going to break, and they're like, okay, let me just, anything to have this guy unlock his hands, I will accept, and they just like kind of go limp and let you pass the guard. That's what happens with like most people up to like purple belt, brown belt level. And then you start getting more advanced guys who are used to it, and They know what's going on, but it's still just so hard to move into to off balance guys. It's a pretty easy thing to step over your partner's leg. Now, if your partner pulls the arm out, then you're back into all the intricate leg pommeling and shelving and everything, switching your hand positions that you were with the basic body lock. But when you're talking about under over, it's a much simpler game. You're passing and you're stepping over the knee, and your whole goal is to step over the knee and to make a cranial shift into top half guard or to top side control or passing to mount. Okay, so it's a very simple game where I lock up and I play a basic game where I'm trying to shelf the leg, step over a knee, pass. I'm trying to split the legs, step over the knee, pass, or move into half guard. And I'm playing this game where I'm either low hip or I'm tripoding. And because my partner's arm is trapped, when she goes to start moving around from here, it's hard to off balance me. The lock is so tight because there's so much mass inside my grip. And from here, it's such an easy thing to start pinning my partner's shoulders and to start stepping into half guard when she can't even see what's going on. She goes to start blocking my knee from stepping over. And I just step over right into half guard, and then I'm pommeling and I'm working from there. And then it's easy to work up to the head and shoulders. So it's a very simple game and very effective because the lock is so tight and because your partner has such a hard time blocking you. Just lock your hands, step over a knee. Once you're over a knee, then you can unlock your hands or keep them locked and work from there. So that's your general gambit when you're working with an over-under body lock with an arm trapped. All right, so now let's look at a high tripoding method from whether we use an initial body lock with an under-over, and we go into a high tripod, or whether we move from a tight waist up to an underhook and we use under-over passing. We're going to look at why we would do this, some of the transitions from other positions into here, and how it's similar and different from double underhook passing. Okay, but it's relatively similar to our typical double underhook passing. It's relatively similar to our tight waist passing, but we're just going to be in a position where we're high tripoded now, where we have a underhook and an overhook, and we're doing our passing from here. Okay, and we can transition from underhook, from overhook to underhook, and we can start playing. We can go and start posting our partner's legs. There's many things we can do that have been the same. This is things that we've done previously, but it is a different position, so we're just going to run through it real quick and look at some of the similarities and differences between this hand position and the other hand positions. All right, so now let's look at the similarities and differences, some of the main similarities and differences between passing with double unders with unlocked hands and passing with over-under with unlocked hands. Okay. When I want to enter into this initial position, all right, we can do this in a couple of different ways. We can use our high tripoding tight waist version, where we move from a tight waist position. We go into a high tripod, and then we just move the underhook up like so, and now we move from a tight waist where we control our partner's hips to an underhook where we control our partner's upper body. So we can transition from a high tripod tight waist to an under over or a double under, and you could move from the hips up to the shoulder in various different configurations with your hands. We can also move to a position where if I go to lock a body lock like so, and now my partner goes to hike the underhook up, and I feel like I'm losing this battle, instead of my head coming across the center line and then she goes into the underhook, I can just shoot my head down to the floor as she goes to bring the underhook up. Now I can just lift the underhook like so, and I go into this high tripod position, and I start to go and work into my favorite passes from there. Okay, so there's some basic steps that we can use. We can transition from tight waist up to positions like so, where I just shoot. I'm playing with a tight waist. I have elbows inside, and then from here I just shoot up like so, and we just drive forward into position. We can go from body locks, where I feel like I've failed body lock. If I want to just go into a high tripod, we just shoot into position. Same thing from here. We can go in, and we can just go into a tripod, shoot into position. Okay? So that's as far as just shooting into this position. It's very similar to the other entrances. All right. Now, as far as similarities and differences, understand that I can interchange these hand positions very, very easily. If I have double underhooks, I can go to over-under. If I have over-under, I can usually go to double underhooks. So the pommeling of the legs is going to be relatively the same, okay? When I pommel, I'm pommeling with all the same pommels that I was looking at before. I will say that when you have an overhook, it is slightly easier to do a couple of things. Number one, it's slightly easier to post on your partner's knee, provided you want to push it down. If I have double underhooks, for example, and my partner double overhooks me, now if I want to take my hand out and I'm in a high tripod to push on my partner's knee, I can't do it sometimes. But if I have the top hand position, now my partner stops me from pushing on the knee, she can't. I just post on the knee, and now I start to go into all of my passes or half guard stuffs and whatever I want to do from there. Okay, so it is a little bit easier to free your hand and use it openly to start posting on my partner's legs or digging into underhooks or whatever you want from there. It also offers you a wider base of support. So from here, whether my partner goes to either bridge or lift me or whatever the case is, I can post with a wide base of support before or after I pass my partner's legs, like so. So that when she goes to bridge now, I have a wider base of support instead of having my elbows closer together with double underhooks, okay? So in general, the leg pommeling is all going to be the same, and you're going to be in a position where you can pass just as easily, and you can transition from over-under or double-under to the opposite hand position. The only differences are, or the main differences are, that you're going to have more versatility with the overhook, with moving your hand into different positions, and your partner has no ability to actually trap your arms into the position that they're in, okay? And also understand that if you do elect to pass to the underhook side, let's say I pommel, and however I may do it, I elect to pass to the underhook side, we have to be in a position here where we can't just come down to side control, because now I'm dealing with the same issue of my partner coming up with the underhook. So if you do elect to pass to the underhook side, I recommend using a shin mount, like so. So now if my partner goes to use the underhook, we just go right into a mounted position, and I'm ready to start passing. I can't just pass to side control on the underhook side with an overhook on the opposite side. Now I run into the same problem. So we use that same V-gripping or shin mounting or a combination of the two to stop our partner from using the underhook, provided we pass across to that side. So the leg pommeling all remains the same. We just have a little bit more versatility, and we have to make sure we understand that we have an asymmetrical hand position now. We don't have double underhooks allowing us to pass to both sides. We have an overhook and an underhook where we can pass to both sides, but if you do pass to your underhook side, your partner now has an underhook on the opposite side, and that makes it a little bit hard to just unlock your hands randomly and try to control your partner's head and arm. You have to be able to address that underhook, her underhook, if you do pass to your underhook side, okay? So those are some of the main similarities and differences between passing with double underhooks and passing with over-under. All right, so let's look at why you might possibly use an over-under versus a double-under. And again, these are such good passing positions. I'm being kind of nitpicky here. And if you get to these positions, your chances of passing drastically increase. Your chest to chest, you have weightless legs, and we're using leg pommeling to beat our partner while we keep their upper body pinned and their lower body relatively controlled. But let's look at some cases on why we would use over-under versus double-under. It comes down to really having someone who is either very good at off-balancing you through Sumigaeshi hooks or is just uber explosive. The main danger associated with double underhooks is base of support. So if I get double underhooks and I can get my elbows to or above my partner's shoulder line, then I'll have a great base of support, and it'll be incredibly hard for your partner to bridge you over. But sometimes you have someone who's has very good timing or is very strong, and as you go to move, they just yank the elbows down, and they either give a strong Sumigaeshi action, or they plant 2 feet on the floor and they bridge you over, and they have strong bridges, and they take you over and you get rolled over and your hands get caught underneath you. So whenever I feel I'm dealing with someone who has very good timing, where as I go to move, they're going to look to take me over, or is just so explosive and strong where they can just clamp the arms down hard, and then my arm gets stuck underneath and I get rolled over. This is the time I would use over-unders rather than double-unders, because of the fact that I have a much wider base of support. So I go in here. A lot of times, let's say I go in and I pass to mount, and as I go to pass to mount, I go to settle in. My partner clamps the arms down strong and actually gives a strong bridge to a side, and oh, I'm getting taken over. Okay? So I use an under over. So if at any point, if my partner goes to off balance me, I have a very wide base of support here. If, for example, I go in and I pass to mount, and my partner goes to bridge me over, yes, my right arm's still trapped. My left arm's free, though. So if she bridges right shoulder, she goes right into my base of support. If she bridges left shoulder, I can post across with the hand, and I can whip this hand out, and now I can reset, and I'm back in business. Okay, so one of the main reasons why I would use over-under versus double-under is because is when I'm dealing with someone who can compromise my elbow position and bring my elbows down low and close together, or someone who's just very big, uber explosive, super strong, and I feel a risk of rollover when my partner either uses strong Sumigaishi actions or commonly big bridges as I go to, and they time me going into pass, into mount or side control. They trap an arm and they bridge and they roll over. Having the outside and up and top hand position with the overhook will allow you to post and give you a much wider base of support. Where I have one elbow posted and now I have a hand out here. I'm ready to go across the body or out in this direction. I have a much wider base of support rather than just my two elbows from one elbow across to the other being my base of support. And if my elbows get crushed together, then the base of support is only the width of my elbows. So this is the main reason why I would use over-under versus double-under, but they're both extremely strong passing positions. All right, so now let's look at double overhooks passing. Now this is a pretty interesting hand position because if you can get it and lock your hands properly, it is an insanely tight lock on your partner because now there's not just a waist, not just one arm, there's two arms inside the lock. So the mass inside the lock is drastically increased, and it just makes the lock so tight, both of your partner's arms are just pinned to their side, and they just can't move anywhere, they can't post, they can't do anything. But it is the most risky and the hardest to get to. Your partner, if you fail, number one, your partner has double underhooks on you now, which is very good for them. And two, you're fighting to clamp both your partner's elbows down to their sides versus just going in and locking or locking one elbow to the side. When I lock with one elbow, it's a pretty easy thing to put weight over one side, and then that crushes crushes your partner's underhook. But now I'm trying to crush two. So if I rotate my partner down to one side, then my partner can hike the other underhook up before I lock my hands in a meaningful way. And now this arm's getting exposed. If I go to the other side, then she can hike the other underhook up. So I have to play a game where I sit back and away and I clamp both elbows down simultaneously, which makes the entrances a little bit harder. But if you can lock your hands in the proper fashion and get the actual lock in place, it is incredibly tight and efficient body lock, and it gives you a symmetrical hand position where now, instead of having one over, one under, it's as symmetrical as having two arms underneath, which gives you the ability to pass equally to both sides. So we're going to look at some entrances now, and then some passes and some similarities and differences between passing here and passing in the previous series. All right, let's look at establishing double overhooks when we're looking to go into body lock passes. First, in all the other body lock setups, whether it be a traditional body lock, whether it be tight waist passing, whether it be inside elbow, whether it be over under, you can set all of these up from a standing position where you dive into these positions. With double overs, you cannot dive into a double overhook body lock against anybody good from the standing position. You'll just dive onto your opponent's double underhooks. Okay? If my opponent has hands inside and you think, oh, I see your elbows connected to the body, let me try to go into double overhooks. When I try to go into double overhooks, your head position will be out of alignment and your head will be too high. So as I go to dive into position, all my partner has to do is scoot underneath me and lift the underhooks, and now you're getting double underhooked and you're getting elevated. This is no good. So all of my entrances will be on my knees, where she's either seated or when she's senpai. Okay. Now there are direct and more indirect methods to setting up this double overhook position. Okay. One is I can bait my partner into locking double underhooks, or maybe she just gets double underhooks and then I have to lock with double overhooks. So my partner initially starts to get double underhooks like so. The first thing I want to do is I want to close my elbows down like so and point my thumbs up to the ceiling, and I want to sit back onto my heels like so. As I do that, I take my my forehead right to my partner's collarbone here. So now when she goes to effectively pull those underhooks up and scoot underneath me, it's a difficult thing. And the further she scoots underneath me, the more that brings my hands into a position where I can lock them over my partner's elbows like so. So I play a game where she goes in, she goes to lock double underhooks. If my elbows are flared out and my thumbs point down towards the floor, she will always be able to scoot underneath me, whether with locked hands or just cut my shoulders, or with unlocked hands and start elevating me up. The second I see her go in, I immediately sit back onto my heels. I don't want to give her my center of gravity and allow her to start elevating me. So I immediately sit back onto my heels, I turn my thumbs up towards the ceiling, and I tuck my elbows inside, here. As I do that, my head drops like so to my partner's collarbone. The purpose of my head position is to deny my partner chest-to-chest contact. When she gets double underhooks, what she wants to do is to get her center of gravity under mine and to scoot forward to get chest-to-chest, like so. Then now she can elevate me and start to go into her attacks. So I want to keep chest-to-chest separation, or a disconnect between our two chests, until I lock my hands. So she goes double underhook, back up. She goes double underhooks, like so. Immediately, we turn the elbows down, thumb turns towards the ceiling, my head comes into position. I sit back on my heels. Now, she goes to start scooting in towards me. It's hard to utilize those underhooks. And now we just go in and we lock up. Once the hands are locked, now we pull ourselves chest to chest. And now we have a symmetrical hand position, so we immediately pull our partner towards us. We pull that butt into the heels. Now we can flatten our partner out with double over body lock. And we're ready to go. Okay, so she goes in. We're playing here. Either I bait her into double underhooks, so I want to play double overhooks, or she just is better at pommeling and she gets to the inside position. The second I see this, we just go here. Now, a second I feel my partner go to scoot in, we just go in and we lock. And now we just suck our partner in. We just drive the upper back to the floor, and now we play a game where we can go in and start our passing work. Okay, so that's more of a direct method where my partner just gets double underhooks, and now I have to go in and start to work. Another more indirect method is where I initially lock over one of my partner's arms with an overhook, underhook. We go in and we initially lock over our partner's arms like so, and now my partner's like, oh, I have one underhook, I want to get to double underhooks. So I leave space for my partner to insert a second arm inside. But the arm comes in and she thinks, okay, now I'm going to hike the underhooks up. And the second I feel the elbow come into my elbow, we immediately tighten everything back up, and now we drive our partner to the floor and we flatten our partner out. So I get one underhook in place, and I go over one of my partner's arms, like so. Now she's like, okay, well, if I can get my second underhook in, I can work from here. So I loosen the grip. When she goes to pommel that hand in, she pommels in, and then I immediately tighten everything up. And now when she goes to use the underhooks, she can't. We can do this as well from a supine position. She wants to go in, and she wants to pommel a hand inside, no problem. Now we go in, and we lock up, and we're ready to start working from here. So we can use a direct method where my partner just gets double underhooks, and then we have to fight from there. Or we can use more of an indirect method where we kind of bait our partner into going in, where we loosen everything up, just so she puts the hands in, and now we retighten, and boom, she has two hands locked in place, and she's getting passed with double overs. So let's talk about another law of locked hands. This time, I'm not going to say never break this rule, but this is, you don't want to ever unlock your hands when you have double overhooks. And the other one, you could kind of, if you have an under over, you can kind of pommel a hand inside. But unless you're planning on completely changing your style of passing, you're going to look to stand up and do loose passing, or post your hands on the floor, do something like, for example, unless I have double overhook passing, and I'm going to not do tight passing anymore, and I'm just going to jump forward and start pummeling and moving into situations like this and trying to walk to a side and pummel my legs in or top pummel or do stuff like that. If you're going to stay with tight body lock passing, you never want to unlock your hands if you have double overhooks, because your partner then will immediately hike the arms up, and now she has at least one, if not two underhooks. In addition, you can't use long arms, short arms, and bring the elbow inside and start double splitting your partner's legs and things like that. So we're going to have centered hands. Our hands will always be locked in the center, whether it be with one of the three grips, and then your hands will stay locked until you step over a knee. And that's pretty much, unless you're going to completely change the style of passing that you're trying to do, your hands are always going to stay locked. All right, if you're trying to stay with tight body lock, chest to chest, half guard passing, your hands are always going to stay locked. All right. Now, I generally prefer, when I'm passing with double overs, to pass right into a mounted position. All right, instead of passing into side control. Okay, because why? Because you have two overhooks. So that means when you pass to one side, you're always going to deal with the problem of your partner having an underhook to come up onto you and recover or go into counterattacks when you pass your partner's legs. In addition, because I have an overhook and not an underhook, when I start trying to take my right shin up on top of my partner's hips, my partner can use their right arm to tuck inside and start interfering with that leg coming up, pushing my knee down, and she can start giving me some issues from here, and it can get kind of hairy from here. Okay, so I generally prefer to pass into mount rather than passing into side control when I have these positions. Not to say you can't pass into side control. You just have to understand that you're dealing with the same issue now of going onto the overhook side. All right, and we can play a game where we either end with a shin mount if we want, like so, or we can play a game where we immediately unlock the hands, we move to a cross-facing position, or we move to this cross-shoulder post, and then my partner goes to use the underhook, and we use that V-grip method, and we start using the same method. But you save yourself all the trouble if you just pass right to mount, okay? So the hands aren't going to unlock until you step over your partner's knee. Once you step over your partner's knee, you can unlock your hands now, okay? When I'm passing, I generally prefer to use some kind of passing style where I pass right into a mounted position, okay? Where I come through, and I pass right into mount rather than passing into a side control, okay? And you also have to understand that when you do unlock your hands, if you step into half guard, your partner's still going to have an underhook. So if I have double overs and I step into a half guard, like so, I have to make sure that I address my partner's underhook. I don't want to step into a half guard of my partner and give my partner an underhook. So the second I see this, I immediately take my head from one shoulder to the other, and then I put that same V-grip in as we did before. So now, when she goes to put that underhook in place, she can't. And now from here, I have two good choices. One is moving to that cross shoulder post, bringing the elbow back inside, then moving to a cross face, locking the hand and pommeling an underhook in. Another great option is to shoot up right and over to a strong cross face and put the V-grip in. So when she goes to use that underhook, she can't. And now I use the cross face to pull my partner towards me, and I place my forehead on the ground. And then I walk my partner's hips in the opposite direction. So now when she goes to use the underhook, she has it, but it's useless. Okay, so if you're going to go into half guard, understand you don't want to just unlock your hand and have your partner come up with the same underhook. It's the same issue. You not pass your partner's guard, and now she has an underhook and half guard. So it's not ideal. So I want to always make sure that from this position, I either cross face, I put my forehead on the floor, or I V-grip and I use that cross shoulder post. Now when she goes to come up, I can always pommel inside and we can get the inside position. All right, so now let's look at some differences and compare between passing with double overhooks and with over-under or double-under body locks. The leg pommeling game is going to be the same, besides the fact that you can't switch your hand position to long arm, short arm with inside elbow positions or tight waist. You have to keep your hands centered and locked. You cannot also high tripod. You can hit a low tripod if you want to make it easier to block your partner's view, to step over the legs, and things like that, like you can do with the over-under. So if I want to, I can do a low tripoding method. I can't do a high tripoding method because my partner will just immediately, my hands will come too high and her underhooks will start to expose me and give me issues. But I can use a low tripoding method if I want to, where my knees come off the floor, and now from here I can use a sprawling method where it's a little easier. I can pommel legs into different positions. Okay, but everything else remains the same. The leg pommeling remains the same. The shelving remains the same. You can't go into double split. It's much harder to go into double split because you can't get the inside elbow position. But you have the luxury of the fact that now your hand position is now symmetrical. When we have double unders, with locked hands, when both of our hands are underneath, we have symmetrical hand positions and we can pass equally to both sides. When we have over-under, we have asymmetrical hand positions, which means that passing to either side is going to be different than passing to one side is going to be different than passing to the other. Now we're back to symmetrical, where we have double overhooks. So we can pass, both the passes are the same from side to side, and we can chain side-to-side passes together and pass to side control on either side. But again, I generally prefer to pass right into mount when I have double over because of the fact that you're passing onto your partner's underhook if you pass into side control, and your partner can't form a side guard, but she can bring the hand down and start to give you problems with going into shin mount and things like that. So I generally prefer passing from double overhooks right into a mounted position where I can immediately pull the elbows up and then get my knees to the inside position relative to my partner's elbows, making a knee elbow escape hard and effectively isolating my partner's hands and elbows up and above their shoulders to go right into attacks after I pass into mount. So just some differences between passing with double overs versus the previous body locks we looked at. Let's just look at just a recap here, and just a generalized game of what we're looking for when we have double overhook passing. Most of the time what's going to happen when your partner feels two hands trapped, they're going to do everything they can to pull one or two arms out. So that means there's usually going to be a conversion from a double over into either an under over or a traditional body lock, and then you revert back to the other body lock passing series that we looked at previously. But assuming your partner stays with two hands inside, whether they keep them in there and they try to bring the arms up, or whether you trap them in there and they can't pull the arms out, it's going to be a simple game. Same as under over. It's going to be stepping over a knee, forcing half guard, stepping over a knee and passing, stepping over a knee, getting to a mount, and working from there. It's a very, very easy game. It's a very simple game and a very effective game. If I lock over both my partner's arms, it's very hard for them to stop me stepping over a knee and forcing them into half guard, moving up to a cross face, putting pressure on them, and forcing from half guard. But it's a very simple game. There's not as much intricate leg pommeling involved because your partner can't use their hands to stop you from stepping over the legs. So just lock over the arms, step over a knee, force half guard, or step over a knee, force side control, or force a mount right away. It's a pretty simplistic game, a lot less intricate with the leg pommeling because of the fact that your partner has no hands to stop you from stepping over the knee. All right, so before we go into side body locking, we're going to be doing a little closing segment on front body locks here. I know this has been a lot of content, and people were asking, oh, why don't you do like a passing 2.0 where it has everything? Like, this is why, because we're 9 hours deep into an instructional that we're not finished with yet, and it's just on one specific part of body lock passing. There's just so much information. The first initial passing series was just to give you guys a general idea and look into the philosophy that we have, a generalized idea of guard passing, and then this is these are specific studies on given positions. The first one didn't have all the information. It's just too much information to pack, and there's new stuff that I'm doing that I wasn't doing back then, obviously in 2019, but it's too much information to pack into one, so we're just doing specific studies, and this one's on body locks. When we're passing with front body locks, you have to remember that, first of all, most people, even world level people, like the best guys in the world, are just clueless when you actually lock your hands around them and they're trying to defend not getting past. There's just countless examples of guys with decent body locks passing guys who they have no business passing. Even a guy like, I know it's a big size difference, but like a perfect example is like my match with Lachlan. Like he goes to sit up and doesn't even have his hands in the right position and just gets body locked and then instantly gets his guard passed. Most people will just fold under the pressure of a decent body lock. Because you're chest to chest and everyone's good at range, keeping distance. But then when you actually get connection, they're just hopeless. So you have to realize that the more basic your opponent is, the lower the skill level, the more basic your pommeling and your ideas have to be. The more advanced your opponent is, and the higher level they are, the more advanced you have to get with your pommeling, and you have to get more intricate with your setups and your diversions going from side to side. The highest level people will require you to play a combination of a low hip game and a tripoding game, where I go from pommeling with the legs and moving hand positions to going into a situation where my hips are high and I can pommel my legs and I go back and forth between the two. So with most people, with like 99.9% of people in the world that you train with, they're just going to fold on their basic body lock pass. You just step over and you force half guard or you pass their guard. And it's like a joke. Like this is just like whatever we learned so far is just like way too advanced to even like start like, dealing with the normal people in the world. But there is that 1% of people out there that it's going to be hard to pass them even if you have a body lock. And the way that you do this against high level people is a combination of going up and down with low hip and high hip methods, and going back and forth between changing hand positions, changing leg positions, pommeling the hands, pommeling the legs, and erasing the arbitrary line between locked and unlocked hands. Okay, and this is how you beat those 5 people in the world that can actually address and deal with this style of passing. So that's just a little closing segment on front body locks. We've went through every scenario from front body locks and things that chain together with body locks. We went with open hands, closed hands, and now we're going to go into a body lock that no one ever really talks about, which is side body locks. So let's start that right now.